I'm Tim Lewis. I'm an author, and I'm introducing Kymberlie. I've been asking her for several weeks now what I should say for her intro, but alas, nothing. And in absence of any guidance, I am obliged to write what I know. This will be brief, and for those of you who know me, the blessing will be well received. She is a published author and a pioneer in blogging. She belongs to several branches of the California Writers Club, including this one. She is president of the Berkeley branch. Her writing style is engaging, and she is unafraid to bare her soul. She has the ability to suck you in and keep you intrigued, not knowing what's coming next, but knowing it's going to be good. On a personal note, she is my editor, brutal and honest, and I am a much better writer for it. Here she is, my colleague and friend, Kymberlie Ingalls.
This is a story about my friend Anthony. It's like I'm in denial that I'm never going to see him again. Then it's as under a spoon. I'm never going to see him again. Anthony was a candle in the window to much of my life. What others avoided seeing, he never ran from. In fact, he came with his hand reaching outward. Always. Today I have lost one of the greater loves of my life. Anthony was a light that guided me through the darkness I've become so familiar with. He knows things that no soul ever has. In all of that knowledge, there was never an ounce of judgment. We met over 2 decades ago when I was dating a rabid football fan. I despise football, but had a bet going just to poke fun at this guy's amped up rant. I called in repeatedly to the local radio show, asking for the score. Finally came the question, I have to know, why don't you just check the TV? I didn't have one at the time. I was a poor blonde. When the end came and the DJ asked why I was so interested for someone who hated the sport, I explained that there was a dinner at stake. And his reply was, girl, if this was a couple of points difference, I'd say you win a Big Mac. If it were a 10-point spread, he should buy you dinner at Denny's. But with this score, brother ought to be flying you off to Milan for dinner and with breakfast in Paris. It was a year later that we actually met. I won a contest to be a DJ for a day. Anthony was the hosting jock, and I carried my nerves on my sleeve when I walked into the studio. I didn't realize it was the same guy until months later. He gave me a quick tutorial of the mechanics and then switched on the microphone. I knew it was my voice, but I never figured out how I managed to speak. But I did. A couple of hours in, me still shaking in my heels, someone called in requesting a song from a daughter to her father. I began to rattle off all of the fitting titles I knew, and he stared at me, eyes wide. 20 years after that night, he said it only confirmed what he saw when I spoke my first words. You were a natural. I watched it, and everybody heard it. Anthony encouraged me to follow that dream. And I did. Like a butterfly who at last believed she had wings, I fell in love with the power of reaching people through music. Of stirring the same feelings, I found it in the notes of a song. It was a quietly turbulent time in my life. It was the wallpaper that nobody noticed in a full room. Many midnights I walked from the pizza place I worked at to the station. Spent hours at his side or in a production room somewhere writing bad poetry about the love sickness I was beginning to feel toward this tall, vivacious man as he bounced off of the walls. Sometimes literally, making up silly words to songs he played, and he just happened to be married. He would give me rides home across town in his beat-up van, but never let on that he knew of my schoolgirl feelings. He instead gave me wings, and as I flew, he migrated away when the station was sold. It was 16 years later that we reconnected. Anthony was no longer married, but I was. He had gone into ministry, and I saw the natural fit. We met and we reminisced about the industry, and then I asked a question that had been burning inside of me for half of my life. Christians claim there is a peace at the end, that you go into God's kingdom rejoicing in this heaven that was promised. Where was that peace when my mother died? Anthony didn't try to sell me the Bible. He simply looked at me with his kind brown eyes and took my pale hand in his dark ones and said, "There is no proof. That's why it's called faith." He was the only person I've ever allowed to talk to me about God. He accepted that we didn't share beliefs. Over egg rolls or pancakes, or as he snuck a shrimp from my plate, I often said, "You know the Bible is just a work of fiction created by man, right?" Just to see the fire in his eyes as he launched into a sermon. He wasn't correcting me. He was simply being Anthony. And I was a believer in Anthony. And he was a believer in me. I was just beginning to find myself as a writer, and again he reached out his hand as I took each step. He didn't pull me along, rather he gave me balance. I trusted him when he said my courage was contagious. And then one day, Anthony had cancer. Everything changed, and I was afraid. As he began his descent, I began to slip away. Self-defense. By now I should be a martial arts master. Even in the distance between our visits, I sent random texts of, "I love you, be strong, but you don't need to be with me." And he said, "I will play that card one day. I love you too." Thoughts gone unspoken for so many years fell out between us. Now is a good time for confession. A girl shouldn't be left to wonder all of her life. We were good not to kiss and tell. If you remember correctly, my wife was already thinking I was having an affair with you. But you wanted me. I remembered the girlish verses I'd scribbled on heart-decorated notepads that you noticed. 1 month later, he is gone. We'd never once kissed. It occurs to me today in his dementia that he'd imagined we had. I find comfort in that, even if fleeting. An unrequited love, not so unseen after all, but instead a butterfly. Our friendship had wings. I don't know who I'm going to reach out to in the middle of the night. That's the biggest loss. And the hugs. The world seems lonelier after just one day without Anthony in it. I went about my day as any other one's day. There's just one less person to tell about it. One very important person. There is no moral to this fable. No lesson to teach. No feeling thankful that he is out of pain because I'm selfish and I want him back here on this earth. This is just me, incredibly, irreparably sad.